well, let's see. If you pass me the book, I can tell you the page, but we are in Leviticus. We are on chapter 19, verse 1.
I want the Robo giving it back to me, just gotta find what page it's on.
693.
693.
693. And we'll all sing together.
Please no.
Let's go hold this second.
Okay, so because Parshat Kedoshim is often partnered with the previous parasha of Acharei Mot as a double parsha, depending on the needs of the calendar. We are actually at the beginning of the Torah portion, even though we are in the middle of the second triennial. So we're at the beginning of chapter 19, and this is a very cool parsha, in my humble opinion. Oh, okay, so it's not ready for HDMI 1 because it will be as soon as I plug it in.
Okay. 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 There we go. Now we're cooking with gas.
No, we don't want to cook with gas. We want electric.
Oh, okay.
Cooking with gas is not healthy. Okay. Where'd they go?
Well, you have Ghostbusters and you had Aquaman. It didn't look a thing like you, Aquaman. Did you get that storm last night, Sam? Where you were? Was the storm bad where you were last night?
No, that's right.
You're up a coach, aren't you?
No, in Bayberry, which is it's another, you were saying, the Greek church is over there.
The Greek church?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Go there for the
Right
Greek
across.
Festival.
Yeah, right across.
Have you ever gone into the sanctuary there?
I've never been inside.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
Both Greek Orthodox churches are beautiful. Yeah.
lots of
Okay.
I'll be there for Greek Festival.
Okay, so we're going to kick off chapter 19. We'll read a couple of verses and then we'll see where it takes us. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the whole Israelite community and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." This is essentially the Israelite mission statement. Right? For those of you who are fuzzy on what a mission statement is, a mission statement articulates the purpose, the core values, and the foundational aims of a company or an institution. Okay? So what is the purpose, core value, and foundational aim of the Israelites? To emulate God by being holy. And it's short enough that it can even fit on a bumper sticker or a t-shirt. Now picture the Israelites wandering through the wilderness, all wearing the same t-shirt.
Mission statement.
Be holy. That's what it means. This is what it means to be an Israelite. And your goal of being holy is that, and you do it to emulate God. If one were to add a vision statement to our mission statement, essentially the vision statement is the aspirational part, the strategic goals for how you're going to get to that. All right, that won't fit into a t-shirt in some ways, because even though vision statements are supposed to be fairly terse, this is the vision statement plus the other 4 books of the Torah.
That'd be hard to fit on a t-shirt.
that would be very hard to fit on a t-shirt unless you wrote really, really small, right? But if I wanted to, I suppose I could even distill it down. So if be holy as an emulation of God is the mission statement, then the vision statement would be to aspire to holiness through the performance of mitzvot, which link us to God and are an extension of godliness into the world. That's what we want to do. Mordechai Kaplan, does everybody know who Mordechai Kaplan is before I
No.
quote?
Quick reconstruction.
Okay, so Mordechai Kaplan is considered the founder of Reconstructionist Judaism, though that was not his goal. Right? And he kind of was pushed into that title by really in many ways his son-in-law. Right? Mordechai Kaplan is an interesting picture of Judaism in that he begins his life in a very traditional Jewish milieu. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're very welcome.
And he kind of moves out of Orthodoxy, and he works at and teaches at the Jewish Theological Seminary, the fountainhead of conservative Judaism, for decades, influencing several generations of rabbis. But he ultimately saw his understanding of Judaism as being an expression of conservative Judaism. It's not like, oh, let me start something new. It's like, for him, what he was articulating, he believed, was conservative Judaism. And there are probably several generations of conservative rabbis who sort of followed his model and would agree that I don't have to be out there in what becomes the Reconstructionist world. I can be very happy within the parameters of conservative Judaism. And when Elliot Dorff wrote a book about conservative Judaism called Our Ancestors to Our Descendants, he has this handy dandy little chart in the middle of the book. And one end of the chart is Orthodoxy, and the other end of the chart is Reform. And then he's got four lines in the middle of the chart: conservative 1, conservative 2, conservative 3, conservative 4. The last of which is what he calls Reconstructionist. Right, and within each of his boxes in the chart, he compares how each of them think about various things like origins of Torah, belief in God, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he puts several people in as exemplars of that thought model. So for Orthodoxy, he put Norman Lamb and Samson Raphael Hirsch and some fairly well-known Orthodox speakers. And he's got Gordis in one box and Finkelstein in one box. He's got Heschel in another one, and he's got in conservative 4 parentheses Reconstructionism. He's got Kaplan and a couple other people. I don't remember all the other people. Buber's over there.
Okay.
Buber doesn't really fit on the chart.
Okay.
So is he saying that Reconstructionist is closer to Reform?
No, it just happens to be the way the chart lays out, where you could theoretically move the conservatives around a little bit, but he's, the most traditional version of conservative he put in your Orthodoxy, the most differentiated he put closer to Reform. Just because you got to sort of arrange it some way, but if you're really going to call them 1, 2, 3, 4, it almost doesn't matter, because his position in writing the book and in defining the categories was these are all categories within the movement.
And how does Reconstructionists differ from us?
Hold that thought for half a second. So both for Dorff, who puts it Reconstructionism in as conservative for, and for Kaplan himself, he never saw himself as outside. In 1968, it is his son-in-law, I forget Eisenstadt, what's his first name? I don't remember. Decides, no, we're going to have our own thing, and he founds the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College in Philadelphia. The answer to your question is, if Kaplan sees what he sees as Judaism as being part of conservative Judaism, it is going to be a variation of what we are. Right? One of my teachers, Joe Brody, used to say that all Jews in America are actually Reconstructionists. And you have two types of Reconstructionists: observant Reconstructionists and non-observant Reconstructionists. Why did he say that? Because Kaplan's premise, or part of it, was that Judaism is defined by community, namely, what the community does is what Judaism is. Therefore, each community can define Judaism for itself. And he takes it gets taken down to a very granular level as congregational. So that Synagogue A, in looking at the entirety of Judaism, will say, this is what we are going to do. Synagogue B will go, no, this is what we are going to do. Synagogue C, this is what we are going to do. And obviously, there will be overlaps in what they all choose to do, but also variations based on the differentiated natures of congregations. Right? To take an extreme example, I'm going to take an Orthodox shul, a conservative synagogue, and a Reform temple. And I chose that just because it amused me, or at least lingo-wise, it amused me. Each of them would assert that they observe Shabbat. That be fair? Okay. However, what it means to observe Shabbat will be different in each of the three institutions, both in terms of the communal observance and the collective observance within the congregation, the personal observance of many of its members, and how that's reflected in the entirety of the celebration of Shabbat. Right? But all three of them would put Shabbat as a value, as an essential Jewish thing. What that means will be really different. But each community, each congregation could say that they are Kaplan, because we are defining our congregation based on our community. And if you are not comfortable, then you're maybe living in the wrong community or trying to live in the wrong community. So one of the things that has happened in the Jewish world to some degree is the and this is not monolithic, but this tends to happen in larger rather than smaller Jewish communities. So in Albany, for example, I'll use that, there are definitely people who are not Orthodox, who are very comfortable going to and being members of the Orthodox synagogue in Albany. In part because the Orthodox synagogue in Albany is much more open and embracing of people, because it's a small community. Right? Therefore, it is less boundary driven. As opposed to when we lived in Toronto, and the big Orthodox synagogue that was not far from where we lived had multiple minyanim every Shabbat. All right, with different, so you had the people who wanted to get up early, daven quickly, and go back to bed. You had the yeshiva cohort. You had the main cohort. There were and there were definitely little variations in how each of them davened and each of them how they did things. But the reality is that if you wanted to be part of A, you were part of A. And yes, you could go and not feel uncomfortable in some of the others, but it was not quite a great fit. But if you were outside of the Orthodox world, you fit in none of these silos, because the silos were very much monolithic. So,
In what way were they monolithic, Rabbi? If they're
in that
doing-
so if you went to the early morning minyan, it meant that you wanted to daven with a certain style and without frills and singing and alacrity, and prayer was a thing that you did because it was a required thing, a commandment thing, not necessarily a way of connecting with God thing.
Isn't that the purpose of prayer?
Yeah.
With God.
Well, that depends on what your mindset is. If I'm starting from a check off my mitzvahs for the day mindset, then the quality of the prayer experience is less relevant than that I do it, because I'm doing God's will by davening. The fact that that may be a completely unsatisfying experience for someone else doesn't matter, because the person who's doing it is not looking for it as an experience. Okay? In many cases, it's, oh, now that I finished with that prayer stuff, I can go do something serious Jewishly, like study. Well, study is a way of worship. But it sort of Chris says this mode of worship is more important than that mode of worship. But I have to do it, so did it quickly, effectively. I crossed all the T's, I dotted all the I's, I did every prayer that I was supposed to. Move on. Let's get to the important stuff. Well,
So it might be
so I mean, I went there once for, I don't remember, there was a reason why. And I remember telling Jody that I essentially hated every minute of the experience. I fulfilled my obligation, but I hated every minute of the experience because I'm not looking for that liturgically. I like to think I know a little bit of Talmud and stuff that I've studied a little bit over the years. But the ideological model of the yeshiva minyan was one that I was very uncomfortable in, not least of which because it really looked askance at Jews who were outside of their little orbit, including some of the people in the Orthodox shul. So it was not just like me, this conservative rabbi. It was, they really looked down at others who didn't embrace their model.
So when you say yeshiva group, that you're talking about the instructors perhaps, as well as any students that were.
This is usually the younger generation of students more so than their teachers, though not exclusively.
So you brought this whole thing about Reconstruction up for what reason as relates to this historical?
I'm getting there. I'm answering your wife's question.
Okay.
So even within, you can get smaller silos that reflect orientations and persuasions.
Hey, how about with you?
Are we a wig wearing
Okay,
Orthodox world, or are we a tichel wearing Orthodox world?
and I'll get downstairs.
Those
yeah.
are really different. You would think that
Okay,
it's all hair covering
thank
as
you.
opposed to non-hair covering,
See
of
you
which
later.
there's a whole bunch. But it's
So
and if you didn't feel comfortable, there was no way to really get comfortable because you didn't fit in those things, which is why you can have Reconstructionist synagogues that are defined. And I would say that each of those was a Reconstructionist synagogue in its own variant of orthodoxy. In the same way that Dorff and Kaplan would say that those Reconstructionist congregations that are part of the conservative movement are in fact all variants of conservative Judaism because they're all Reconstructionist congregations. Okay, so, and the advantage of Kaplan's model, coming back to where I was, lest you thought I forgot, is they're not static. The presumption is that they are going to change. So Kaplan's magnum opus was a book called Judaism as a Civilization. And his goal, in part, in writing it, was to emphasize the idea that Judaism is not just a religion, a this, a that. It is the entirety of everything that defines a civilization. That includes religion and culture and literature and food and anything that is part of how a civilization reflects itself. That's Judaism. And that you can therefore have people who are going to emphasize one versus another. And so he defined Judaism as an evolving civilization. And my teacher, Jaak Rosenborg, Zichrono Livracha, who was a student of Kaplan's, added one word which I think was essential. And he said, Judaism is an evolving religious civilization. Yeah, me too. That's why I remember and quote it. Because that, you can't, for as much as you can talk about all of those other elements, all of those other elements are ultimately driven out of the religious elements. You don't have modern secular labor Zionists without the religious undertow that kept alive the connection between us and the land of Israel. They don't come into being without Jews who for centuries prayed every single day to go back to the land of Israel. So, in the same way that companies, institutions need to periodically look at their mission statement and their vision statement, we are getting here in the book, in this parasha, in this section of Leviticus, the mission statement, which ought not to change all that often. And then the vision statement, because theoretically, if your vision statement is about aspirations, strategic goals, future plans, if you haven't achieved them, then either you need to go back to the drawing board or figure out why you're not doing it. But theoretically, you should have to change your vision statement more regularly than your vision statement. We're getting here in the command, you shall be holy, the mission statement of what it means to be an Israelite. The vision statement component, if you will, is what does an Israelite look like tomorrow? Sort of an ill-defined tomorrow. And we know that the Israelites were themselves constantly in process and in flux. Right? When, right, just to give you an easy example, when Moses comes down from Mount Sinai with the two tablets, what catches his attention?
A golden calf.
Golden calf. And you step back and say, wait a second. How did they possibly do this? And the answer is because they are an evolving religious civilization that has not completely lost or divested itself of pagan practice. Because you can't just flick a switch and say, oh yeah, all that stuff. No, all the stuff that exists around us, gone. For however long the Israelites were in Egypt, they lived in a pagan society. Right? And they couldn't just leave it on the side of the Sea of Reeds when they crossed over and said, oh, okay, everybody, we're leaving behind all of that stuff. Stuff doesn't go away that easily. Right? We live in a Christian society. Some days it feels more oppressively so than others, but we live in a Christian society. And things intrude into our awareness and reality that we don't often know the roots of, and therefore we just sort of embrace them. Give you an easy and classic example. Knock wood. You ever say that?
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood. I gave you the shorter version.
I've heard of that before.
Okay.
I know where.
I
it
forgot what
comes
old
from.
best.
What?
I know where it comes from.
Yes, that's exactly where it comes from. It comes from touching the cross. Okay.
I didn't know that.
Most Jews don't know that because the phrase is ubiquitous. All right. And Jews use it all the time. And I'm going like, you realize where that comes from, don't you? No. Okay, so let me tell you.
Ed Olshansky explained that to me.
It comes from touching the cross. Oh, so that's not really a Jewishy thing. No, it's really not a Jewishy thing.
But people say it.
People say it because the usage of it is ubiquitous. It is disconnected from its roots for most people, and most Christians who use the phrase don't necessarily know where it comes from and why they're saying it. It's meant to be sort of like either good luck or a ward off of evil spirits. Right? However you understand it, it has, most people don't know what it's connected to. But we've all heard lots of Jews use stuff like that. So it's in the atmosphere, and you can't simply say, oh, we're going to close ourselves off to the atmosphere. Right? why for the longest time did rabbis and cantors wear robes?
Because the priesthood.
Yep. And it starts in Germany, and it was tied in part to modeling the institutions as they were reforming. All right, reforming. It's a verb. It's a process. We're changing it. We're tinkering with it. Right? And so part of it was make the synagogue look more like its Christian counterpart, so that we've seen less strange to the others. And part of it was rooted in academia, where especially in German Lutheran churches, your priest, your minister, I should say, right, was ordained by an institution of higher learning. And what do you do in institutions of higher learning? You wear robes, and you're vested, and you get a cowl, and you get 3 stripes on your sleeve. That's not how Jews ordained rabbis. That's, I don't want to say they patted you on the head, but the idea of smicha means that you're resting your hands on someone. It was this, right? You didn't get fancy attire. You got a thing that said, okay, you're official.
So why do we still wear them on Yom Kippur?
The ones that we wear on Yom Kippur are in lieu of wearing a kittel. That's where that piece of it comes from, and that's why they're white instead of like a black or other color academic one.
So they're a symbol of, I'll say authority, some kind of authority.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In the same way that I have colleagues who will, whenever they officiate at anything, always wear a talit as a sign of office. Except that makes no sense when you think about it, because every Jew can wear a talit. So how is it a sign of office? It's not. But the priest has a stole or something that they right. So it was an emulation. It was an affectation.
Interesting.
So we exist as an evolving religious civilization, and it evolves differently at different times in different places, and different communities will evolve in different directions.
If you evolved,
Mhm.
how do you maintain the course?
That is the secret of evolving. Because if you evolve too far away from your core, you are no longer the thing.
It's sort of like Judaism without God, that the humanistic school is sort of like.
I think they have sort of stepped out. Though the crazy part is there's a midrash that says, if it's a choice between forgetting me or forgetting mitzvot, better they should forget me and just do mitzvot. The rabbis already put that in God's mouth, because the presumption there was that if you do all this other stuff, it'll lead you back to God. And Judaism without the behavioral component is a dead end, because it doesn't have an endurance. Right?
Well, that's true, because when an environment change, I'll say in biology and what have you, then those that live in or have their life through the environment, they have to change too. And that's called evolution. It's a slow, maybe if they're going to survive, and if their life is going to go on as an entity or as a species, a type, they have to. Something has to work somehow.
They're yeah.
Right. So and I think that's So the key thing that we want to, the core, as you said, Ernie, must be, in my mind, life. To maintain your Kadesh,
Your holiness.
holiness there. Because the environment is changing, and it was one way for my grandfather, then I still have to pursue that core, but it somehow the external not application, but the external representation of doing that. And I'm not saying it's false or fake because it's a representation. That's the way we did it, but we don't do it now. It's like a slang word that now, got started when came out of a word. Now it's slang for something else.
But the core of Judaism is like in your own life has certain things within that core. One would be God, second would be Torah, and the third would be holiness, and the fourth would be prayer. Now, the prayers may change, but the overall idea is that you're praying to God and God's listening to the person in prayer, which I love that little bit.
I love it.
And you can, how can you have Judaism without Torah, and how can you have Judaism without God? And so, I mean, that to me is the core.
Here's my core.
But
L'chaim.
yeah, but the core in some ways is in fact behavioral. In that, take all three of your things, with the exception of holiness or be holy. Hello, Birdie. They're behavioral, all right? Torah is not an abstract. Torah is a thing you study in order to inform yourself so that you know what to do. Prayer is an active, it's not a theoretical. It's a thing that you do and engage in as a way of building relationship with God. And by extension, community if you do communal prayer. What was the other one? Said Torah, prayer, holiness. What was the fourth one, Arnie? God. Well, God sort of comes in through the worship, through the other aspects of worship, because that's relationship building. Okay, but let's take our three institutions, and then we'll take the members of said institutions, and then I'll tell you a story. Right. So, if all three institutions as institutions are committed to Shabbat as part of the core, right, and create opportunities for the worship of God through the observance of Shabbat, then they are fulfilling that sense of mission. All right. But, and it's a really big but, what's the biggest difference between our fictional Reconstructionist congregations, one Orthodox, one conservative, and one Reform? What's the biggest difference between the institutional value and the reality?
It's the externals, I think.
Right. Here's the difference.
The Friday night only. And for some, because they come on Friday night, the Torah is going to be read on Friday night and may also be read on a Saturday.
But that already is the institution's attempt to further its mission of teaching Torah, exposing Jews to Torah, engaging Jews with Torah and with prayer. You know, because on one level, in many Orthodox congregations, Friday night services are very small. And people come on Shabbos morning. So I could argue that, well, you know, one group does it on Friday, does the big thing on Friday, the big show on Friday night. The other one does the big show on Saturday morning. It is the level of participation that is different.
True.
Right? in our Reform Reconstructionist congregation that does a big service on Friday night, and the rabbi prepares a sermon, and they create as good a worship experience as possible. What percentage of the congregation normally shows up? Rhetorical, but small. All right. Let's go to the opposite extreme. What percentage of the Reconstructionist Orthodox congregation is in shul on Shabbat relative to the number of people who are members? Huge. Huge. Why? Because there is less dissonance between the institutional value system and the individual's value system. Part of the reason I'm a member of an Orthodox shul is because I'm choosing to live an essentially Orthodox lifestyle, which includes observance of Shabbat.
All walking together to go to shul.
And the truth is, even if you're one of those who drives to the Orthodox shul because I live too far away and I can't afford to move right now, but I'm going because I'm trying to capture as much of that experience as possible. You know, I remember when my friend Bruce, I went to visit my friend Bruce, who moved back to Montreal after after his internship. And he joined an Orthodox shul. And I remember going to spend Shabbat with him, and I'm listening to the sermon, and when we're in a private moment, I'm like, how do you do this? I said, I was ready to jump up and say, are you insane? I don't remember what he was saying, but it was just so like, to my mind. And he says, oh, it's real simple. I just don't listen. And I go like, what do you mean you did? He
So
said, look,
why is he there?
now I'm going to tell you why he was there. He's going like, for 20 minutes when the rabbi's speaking, who's an otherwise nice guy, but I just don't listen. Sometimes I go out, sometimes I read a book, you know, like a Jewishy book, not a novel. You know, or I just sort of daydream a little bit, and but I have people who invite us for Shabbos lunch, and we invite people, and my kids have kids to play with, and I don't have to worry that if they go over to Yankel's house that they're going to get treif, or they're going to get TV, or they're going to get all the things that we don't want to expose them to on Shabbat. So my trade-off is I don't listen. And when certain other people also speak, I just don't listen, because that's my trade-off for being part of a community where I get most of what I need.
So what's being said that he doesn't?
It doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter. You know, could be an attitude about Israel or something about going on in the news. It doesn't matter. It's called, there is no community for me that is going to be a perfect fit. But if I can find one that gives me 85% of what I need as opposed to 15% of what I need, that's the trade-off.
So it's more a social thing?
It's more than that. I mean, it's more than just social. It's not just having people to be friendly with. It's people who share a value system and a lifestyle that I want. So, but every single one of these shuls is evolving in its own sorts of ways. They're just different. Yeah.
If I was Christian, I live a good life because there's heaven above. If I'm in Judaism, we don't have the heaven above, and possibly the resurrection at the end where the Messiah comes and all that, and that's just all going to heaven. So why should I be holy? What is there other than saying that you would be in the presence of God?
That's sufficient.
But that's,
And the other is just fear, and fear is a terrible motivator,
I know it is.
and it doesn't work.
So we don't do Jonathan Edwards pretending over to the pit of hell. So therefore,
Okay, and just to prove to you that, first of all, there are Jews who believe that you're gonna go to hell, all right?
Okay.
Does that motivate them to do stuff? No. Does it motivate Christians? No. Okay, so negative reinforce or the threat of negativity somewhere down in the future does not work. So I'm gonna give you a positive model of you can ultimately achieve the fullest measure of your own sanctity and potential by emulating God as a source of holiness in the world.
okay,
That's a purpose-driven life. That's a meaningful existence. And I think more people resonate with that than with you're going to hell. Eh, that's the why.
okay.
That's the why.
But I think there is, if I may, just a little bit more in the sense that the reason why you do things, okay, as best I can express it, is that the mitzvot have something to do with life. And l'chaim is the biggest value that I have. If I don't have life, I don't have any of this. I don't have any worries. I don't have any.
Okay,
I'm
but
not
I'm
arguing
gonna
anything.
push back a little bit, Sam. Okay, how is I'm gonna give you an example. How is my putting on tefillin in the morning and saying the blessing Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav la'aniach tefillin? How is that life affirming?
Because it is a outward expression of an action that we do, which is keeping the mitzvot, that pertains always to life. All the mitzvot, to me, it seems like pertain to life, to l'chaim, and there's an objective quality that exists with obeying, telling the truth. Okay, there's a good one. Why is it a moral value to speak the truth, not to say disparage your neighbors with an untruth, or is what's in it for you not to do it? And the not to do it is that the longer and the more that you tell a lie or lie in your life, then the less you are able to comprehend reality. You lose sight of it. So the loss of reality is the loss of God. You can't see anymore. There's no basis, there's nothing. And I fully agree that no one of us, comprehends reality in its fullness. If we were, we'd be the Almighty, but we're not. So, but the best we do is that we pursue that to me. So that's why I think the commandments, the mitzvot, really do have a practical value, not in the sense that it's going to make me more money in life or that I'm going to be, say, happy, handsome, or anything else, but it's in a way connected to reality, and the loss of reality is the loss of everything.
I don't know that I want to make the fulfillment of mitzvot that practical. And I think it's I threw out the example of tefillin, and you came back with telling the truth, right? Those are very different. They're both
I
mitzvot.
didn't say I had a practical, a totally objective understanding of reality or but I'm saying that they tell me, the words tell me that they are a reminder that I am to do
Yes,
My head is my hand.
they're behavioral norms.
Yeah.
Okay, and behavioral norms absolutely do affect our society. And if you wanted to suggest that tefillin are a mnemonic device, which are meant to remind me that I'm supposed to harness my ability into the service of God, I would accept that. Because I think that is what they're for. But that makes them somewhat practical, but not the same way that I was hearing you. So, and if I'm mishearing or you, then I apologize.
Yeah.
Right? And that sort of, let me bring it back, because ultimately that the illustration about the different Reconstructionist modeled congregations and their congregants is ultimately about behavioral norms. Right? So I share with you the following little story, and then we're going to finish up because we did a verse, and well, that's enough. My first year in the pulpit, I'm the educational director of the congregation in which I served. And I'm sitting with this woman to talk about her son, who's a pain in the tuchus. All right. And I am sitting there, and it's before Pesach, so I'm a little distracted. And Mrs. Whatever sort of notices, Rabbi, you seem a little distracted. I said, well, it's Erev Pesach, and I got this long list of things that I still have to do, da 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 da. And she says, and she gets very wistful. And for the next 10 minutes, she's telling me about all of these things that she remembers doing with her grandmother, unpacking the dishes and polishing the silver and blah, 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 blah. And beautiful stuff, And then she ends it with, and her darling son, he doesn't have any of those memories. And I'm gripping the arms of my chair, because what I want to do is jump over the desk, grab the woman, throw her out of my office, and say, go home, make Pesach, and your kid will have these memories, in which case maybe he'll have a clue as to why all this Jewish stuff actually matters to you. It's behavioral. Okay? So the mission statement is wonderful. This is the purpose. Be holy. All right. Just before Revelation in the book of Exodus, what does God tell Moses to tell the Israelites? Your purpose is to be Mamlechet Kohanim and Goy Kadosh. You are supposed to be a nation of priests and a holy people. Okay? Be prepared for the details. Right? That's the same thing. Kadoshim to you. Be holy. That's the purpose. That's the foundation. That's the basis of everything of who you are and who you are supposed to be. And this is how you do it, how you reflect it, how you translate it into reality. And if you don't, then it does not work. Right? If Starbucks has the goal of being the best distributor of coffee in North America, well, if they stop making good coffee or providing quality service in their stores, what's going to happen? They're going to close. The company's going to fail. All right. And I could have picked on anybody. But that's the reality. If you don't translate your core mission statement into practical things, then it does not translate into the future. Okay, Adkan, till here. And I lied, we did 2 verses, not just 1. Gotta love that. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, gives you an extra verse.
That could bring up a lot of conversations too.
Well, I suppose that's fair, but
I would say